Hello everyone. So, what we are discussing now different approaches to measure the compression pressure. In last class we have discussed one method of measuring the compression pressure based on the manometer principle. Here we will discuss the method, it is a fully computerized measurement technique. In this system again we use the mannequin leg and air bladder like earlier which we have discussed, but as the pressure is measured using pressure sensor. So, we can record the pressure for long duration. Here the pressure was recorded for 24 hours duration and pressure drop for different parameter was recorded over specific time period, and we get the analog data and it is converted to the analog to digital through analog to digital converter, and which is fed to the computer for getting the pressure profile. The same tube which I have already mentioned, bladder tube. So, from bladder there are two tubes, one is input tube, that is for pressure exertion, the air inlet, and another tube is for measuring the bladder pressure. So, this tube is connected with the digital pressure sensor, and from that the A to D converter we get the pressure value through the computer. Okay. It is connected with the computer. This is the system photograph, and construction wise it is a similar construction, air bladder is there, but the only change here is that instead of manometer here we have used the pressure sensor and which is connected with the computer. So, this is the same setup, and compression bandage here it is showing it is at ankle zone, it is wrapped and pressure is monitored here with the time. In this experiment we have taken the 9 different samples, bandage samples, commercially available bandage samples. We have done detailed studies on these bandages, but here I will take some specific bandages just to see the trend. The detailed research study is not required at this stage, but we will try to see the bandage structure, effect of bandage structure on the compression behavior. Now, effect of mass per unit area of bandage. So, what we have done, we have taken bandage B and bandage H. So, if we see here bandage B is mass per unit area is 257 and bandage 8 is heavier, it is a 378, and other parameters are almost same except the bandage mass per unit area. So, other parameters were almost similar. The bandage with higher mass per unit area, that is bandage H, the internal pressure applied by the bandage decreases. So, initial internal pressure was kept constant for both bandage B and bandage H by adjusting the tension. If we see these two graphs, the bandage H, this is the bandage H where pressure drop, the internal pressure drop is high, it decreases at higher rate than the bandage with lower mass per unit area. So, heavier bandage is showing higher drop in pressure. This may be partially due to lower extensibility and relatively higher initial modulus of bandage B than bandage H. So, bandage B's initial modulus was higher than bandage H and extensibility was also lower. So, to retain pressure even if the bandage is lighter, that is mass per unit area is low, if we use the bandage with higher initial modulus or lower extensibility, then also it can retain the pressure. So, pressure drop will be less. The presence of higher crimp, so due to other structural parameters, the bandage H shows the rapid stress relaxation. So, if the bandage thickness and mass per unit area is high, in that case the bandage was prepared with a higher crimp. So, that the crimp present in the bandage will have relaxation, will try to relax and immediately the pressure drop will be there. Now, this we can see here, this is bandage say H and bandage B. Now, while applying pressure, initially the pressures were same by maintaining the tension, but with the time this crimp will try to get straightened. A bandage dimension will be, it will be stretched, the more stretch will be there in bandage H than bandage B due to higher crimp. So, stress relaxation will be high in case of bandage H, that is why the pressure drop will be high. Now, if we try to see the bandage extensibility, for that we have taken two different bandages, bandage C and bandage H, their mass per unit area are typically same. So, we can see the bandage C and bandage H, their mass per unit area are same, but bandage C is having much higher extension than bandage H. So, bandage C is having higher extensibility, so bandage with higher warpwise extensibility shows faster and higher drop in initial pressure applied by the bandage. Now, if we see here, the warpwise extensibility in bandage C is higher, but bandage H warpwise extension is much higher than bandage C, it is 95.21% and here it is a 118.65%. Warpwise extension is higher, although the weft-wise extension in bandage C is higher than bandage H. While wrapping, the extensibility in warp is important, not in weft. So, this bandage C and bandage H, they have classical example that warp wise extension of bandage H is higher, whereas bandage the wave twist extension is lower as compared to bandage C. So, that is why bandage C, bandage H has got higher extensibility, that is why pressure drop is higher in bandage H. Higher wave twist initial modulus in bandage C may also be partially responsible for proper maintenance of initial pressure. So, wave twice initial pressure, initial modulus was high for bandage C. So, these two factors are responsible for maintaining the pressure. Number of wraps or number of layers or number of folds, we can use different terms here. So, different agencies they use different terms. So, we have selected two different bandages. The internal pressure with lower number of wraps decreases at higher rate than the bandage with higher number of wraps. So, that is why we have observed here, with the increase in number of wraps, the effect of drop in the internal pressure reduces. That means, if we increase the number of wrap, that pressure drop during time will reduce. So, the internal pressure with lower number of wraps decreases at higher rate. So, if we want to retain the pressure, we must apply more number of wraps. So, this is mainly due to the reinforcement or support provided by the upper next layers of wraps. Effect of initial internal pressure, that is done by changing the tension. Okay. So, two different bandages were studied at 50, 60 and 70 millimeter of internal pressure. So, internal pressure means it shows the limb hardness 50, 60 and 70 millimeter of internal pressure. The internal pressure profile with the time is different for different bandages and also depend on the initial pressure. Initial pressure, that means 50, 60 and 70 millimeter initial pressure means by changing the wrapping pressure, wrapping tension, we can change this pressure. The general trend is that the bandage with higher initial internal pressure, that means when we wrap the bandage at higher tension. So, initial internal pressure if it is high, it shows higher rate of pressure drop. So, that means if we apply the higher tension during the wrapping, that will result higher stress relaxation. So, when we wrap at the tension to get the 50 millimeter pressure, that means we are wrapping at lower tension than when we are applying 70 millimeter Hg pressure. So, the bandage was initially under stressed condition for 70 millimeter Hg. So, as it is under high stress condition, the stress relaxation will also be high. As the higher initial pressure means the bandage also at higher stress condition, which leads to higher stress relaxation with the time. So, to maintain the pressure at certain level, internal pressure at certain level, we should not go for higher initial internal pressure. So, moderate internal pressure is required, so that we can maintain the pressure. Now, our next study is that the dynamic measurement. In this study we try to simulate different practical aspects. So, case 1 is bending of leg. So, bending of leg at knee as well as at the ankle portion. Here the mannequin is developed in such a fashion, this knee and ankle can be bent, and this is done by using one motor with the crank arrangement, and this crank system reciprocates. It will generate a reciprocating movement and such that the leg and knee portion there will be bend created. This simulates the bending of knee and ankle due to the limb movement, due to walking or running or jogging. So, it is very important that someone is putting bandage on ankle and knee during use with the time, how the pressure is getting changed. We must study these characteristics. Now, here is the system. We can see this is a motor system here, and it is linked with the crank arrangement. This is the crank arrangement which makes the to and fro reciprocating movement. Now, we can see the video here. This is the crank arrangement, and another we can see here, this is the one pneumatic cylinder. This moves at slow rate, and here this is the crank arrangement which is moving at faster rate. Now, you can see here, this is the type of movement created. Now, this is actually simulating the bending of knee as well as the ankle joint, and this pneumatic cylinder, the main function of this pneumatic cylinder is to change the pressure of air inside the bladder in dynamic condition. Now, as we have discussed earlier, in the bladder, this is a bladder, so black color we can see. Okay. This is to pressure measurement, and this is for pressure measurement. System, and here it is a air inlet. Now, earlier we have seen this, and the whatever the air inside the pressure, internal pressure, it shows the limb hardness, okay, muscle hardness. Now, earlier what we have tried, we have seen that the air at constant amount of air is first entered, and so that the pressure, initial pressure was fixed, and then this is the inlet was stopped, and on that we have done experiment. Now, here the idea is to change the limb hardness, because while walking or moving, our the muscle, the hardness of muscle keep on changing, just to simulate this, the air inlet with a use by using one piston and cylinder, it goes keep on changing. It enters when we need a higher pressure and it comes back to reduce the pressure. So, in this way the cyclic motion takes place. Here we can see here this by this video once again. This is for, there are two reciprocating movement. This movement it is for the steps, it shows the movement of leg, and another movement is here, and this is this movement which is slower, this piston, this movement which is showing it is going connected with the air, this is the syringe and it is going to the bladder. So, which is simulating the cyclic change in the hardness of muscle. So, bending of leg we have seen. So, monitoring of air bladder over dynamic mannequin leg, this is mounting the air bladder on the mannequin leg, then inflation of bladder using hand pump. We can use hand pump also here if we want a static mode. The recording of internal pressure we can record, then we apply bandage. Due to the bandage application the pressure increases, that difference we can measure, and then under reciprocation we can record the change in pressure in each and every cycle. So, with the different cycle the pressure will constantly changing, it will change, and we can measure the pressure with the time. We can see here calf muscle expansion or contraction system. Suppose this is a muscle. Now, here the piston is there, cylinder and piston, the movement of this piston will lead to change in calf muscle expansion or contraction. That is how we get the change in hardness, and that is measured by this air pressure sensor. This instrument, the flow chart is that the tube comes out of the inflated bladder and it is going to the differential pressure sensor. Through analog to digital converter we can record the data in the computer. This is the type of profile we get in the instrument, where the number of layers used is 5, that is bandage layers were kept 5, width of bandage was 10 centimeter at knee position, and displacement of leg, that is while walking it will simulate the steps length. The displacement of leg was 24 centimeter, and speed of movement, that is the how fast he is putting step, it is a 60 strokes per minute. That is these are the parameters with which we are getting this type of profiling. That is higher values, that means maximum pressure, and it is a lower pressure, and this is carried out up to say 1000 second for certain time. So, we can see the mean pressure, that is internal pressure, gradually reduces. This is mainly due to the relaxation of the bandage. Now, in the work plan, the study what we have carried out, the effect of bending of length, the variables what we have done here, it is a stroke movement, that strokes per minute, that is when it, suppose it is he is moving at slow speed, it is 60 strokes per minute, and to simulate high speed it is a 90 strokes per minute, and the displacement of leg, it is 12 centimeter, 18 centimeter and 24 centimeter. These are the two variables we have used here. Tests were carried out for 2 hours continuously, it was recorded. Initial tube pressure, that is initial internal pressure, which simulates the hardness, it was kept 40 millimeter here, like we have seen earlier, it was from 50 and 60 was carried out, but here initial pressure was kept 40 millimeter Hg, and measurement of interface pressure was carried out after each second. After 1 second we get the value. 2 bandages were taken, one is called, it is a short bandage and this is the long bandage, short stretch and long stretch bandage. The short stretch bandage are those where the extensibility is less than 100%, and long stretch bandages are those where extensibilities are more than 100%. So, based on that the bandages are characterized in 2 categories, short stretch and long stretch. So, short stretch and long stretch bandage, mass per unit area for short stretch was less, 283 and 370 for long stretch, thickness was given. Now, we can see with all these parameters like number of layers, 5 layer, 10 centimeter width for 2 hours duration at knee position. So, the position measured was at knee position, displacement with 24 centimeter and 60 strokes per minute the speed of the movement. What has been observed, bandage A was with a short stretch bandage, and this is long stretch bandage, bandage B was long stretch. So, in case of bandage B, the sub bandage pressure drop was higher than the short stretch bandage. So, keeping the initial pressure same, which is this is the pressure, initial pressure of the bandage, that means the bandage with the long stretch bandage, they are responsible for the drop in pressure, that we have seen earlier also. So, to retain the pressure we must use the short stretch bandage, at least for knee zone, where the profile is the simple profile with higher the radius of curvature. Now, try to see the pressure drop in static mode and in dynamic mode. Suppose we are applying bandage at knee position and the patient is stationary, he is not moving, static. In that case, for both the bandages the pressure drop will be low, lower than at the dynamic stage. So, in dynamic stage pressure drop is very high, and here again we can see the pressure drop in long stretch bandage is higher than the short stretch bandage, both in static and dynamic mode. So, pressure drop is higher in case of dynamic condition as compared to the static condition. This is because the faster relaxation of stress under dynamic condition is taking place. So, if it is in dynamic condition, so stress relaxation will take place at faster rate, that is even structural reorientation will also be there. So, that will also take part in stress relaxation. Now, effect of stroke per minute on pressure profiling of bandage B, here bandage B is taken with the long stretch. So, B and this is for A. Now, subbandage pressure, if we can see that with a low pressure that low stroke per minute, the subbandage pressure drop is low. So, as we increase the stroke per minute, stroke frequency, the pressure drop will be high. So, pressure drop increases with the increasing stroke per minute. That means, a person with a bandage, if he is moving at higher speed, higher rate of stepping, so he will lose the pressure at higher rate. This is basically due to the fact that the higher stroke rate means that with the time, so at it is done for 2 hour. So, for 2 hours with the stroke per minute of say here 90 stroke per minute. So, 2 hours there will be 90 into 60 into 2, that many strokes will be there. But on the other hand, for 60 stroke per minute, so number of cycling, number of stress relaxation cycle is more for higher stroke per minute. That is why the stress relaxation pressure drop will be high for higher stroke per minute. So, this is basically it is a number of cycles. Again, effect of deflection, if you can see the leg deflection 12 centimeter, 18 centimeter and 24 centimeter, the pressure drop is higher for 24 centimeter, that means reduction in pressure after 2 hours. So, that means if we have higher stretch, higher displacement of limb, that means the stretch in the bandage will be high, that will reflect on pressure drop. There will be higher stretch, higher permanent deformation in bandage, and effectively the pressure will reduce. Now, here in the under dynamic condition, the effect of cuff muscle expansion or contraction we have studied. Now, 3 different samples were taken. The test duration 1 cycle, that is 30-second cycle, that is in 1 cycle in 30 seconds there will be 1 cycle completed, that means expansion and contraction. The complete cycle will take 30 seconds. Measurement of interface pressure is at every 1 second, that we have already mentioned. So, 3 bandages were taken. So, woven structure with different combinations. Here we can see the extensibility, here 3 different extensibility, 2 low stretch and 1 the short stretch 2 samples and 1 long stretch 145%. So, these are extension, these are low extension, medium extension and high extension you can say, and what we have coded this value, this E -1, E 0 and E +1, 3 levels, -1 level, 0 level and it is a 1 level. So, stretchability is taken here, we can see bandage stretchability, it is low, medium, high. Low means 45%, medium 95% and high is 145%, -1, 0, 1. Bandage tension we have kept 2 level, one is low, that means T minus 1 and T plus 1. E minus 1 means bandage with low extensibility, E 0 bandage with medium extensibility, E 1 bandage with high extensibility. Similarly, amount of air bladder expansion and contraction, we have taken 3 different levels. Amount of air, that means amount of air expansion means that the pressure inserted in the, that is, it shows the hardness of the bladder. So, amount of air bladder expansion and contraction, the low level, medium level and high level. So, for a particular experiment, if we see E minus, T minus, E minus 1, T minus 1, A minus 1, that will mean that we have taken the bandage with lower stretchability, the bandage tension we have kept at lower level and amount of air bladder expansion at lower level. So, this is the notation we have used here. Now, here it is a one cycle where it shows the time within one cycle. Here this one is the air bladder pressure in one cycle without bandage, this is without bandage, and initially when the piston moves from left to right, the air inlet in the bladder will get expanded. So, bladder pressure will increase and then while reverse movement, the bladder pressure will decrease. So, this is the initial pressure, okay, and here it is a pressure, the extra pressure due to bladder movement, which shows the cup muscle expansion and contraction, and this is the pressure profiling after bandage application in the bandage condition. Now, if we keep on taking the difference with this is the difference. This difference shows the excessive pressure due to the bandage. Okay. So, this is excessive pressure, that excessive pressure is changing with the cycle due to the expansion and contraction of the muscle. Now, coming to the experimental results, here we can see the effect of bandage extensibility. So, bandage extensibility E minus 1, E 0, E plus 1. So, y axis it excessive bandage pressure. So, this is the excessive pressure. So, for low stretch, keeping all other parameters constant, low stretch bandage will insert, that it will impart higher pressure, and high stretch bandage will impart lower pressure, that we have already seen earlier. But in dynamic condition we can see this curve at the top where combination is that E minus 1, that means it is a lowest extensibility and other two parameters were kept constant. So, here bandage extensibility is there, other two parameters A minus 1, the amount of air at the lowest level, and T minus 1, tension is at lowest level. Only variable is that bandage extensibility. This curve shows that the bandage with lower extensibility will impart higher pressure, the subbandage pressure. So, as the extensibility increases, the pressure, the sub-bandage pressure reduces, and this is true for the total cycle, that is at different, at every level we can see this is true, but this is prominent when the bandage expansion is maximum. The working pressure is higher for short bandage, short stretch bandage, that we have seen. For short stretch bandage, if we use, this is always during walking, during movement, it will keep on imparting pressure on the body. But in case of short stretch bandage, this pressure, extra pressure will be low. So, we must decide which we have to use depending on our comfort requirement. Okay. Next is that effect of bandage tension. Here the bandage tension, if we increase, this is the lower tension and it is a higher tension, as we have seen already. The bandage pressure, resting bandage pressure will be high when we impart the higher pressure, and here we can see from these three curves, with the increase in tension, bandage tension, the bandage pressure, excessive pressure, sub bandage pressure increases, but for the low stretch bandage, where extensibility is low, the pressure is high. So, that we have already seen. And now the effect of the amount of air bladder expansion or contraction. So, depending on our posture, the muscle get expanded at different level. So, we can see here this diagram, this figure shows that with the lower expansion, the initial pressure, the initial air pressure will be low, but as we increase the pressure, that amount of air, as we increase the amount of air at say +1 level, this is the initial pressure will be high. The same trend is followed, but at the maximum level, the mid level of the cycle, this difference is maximum. Now, coming to the excessive sub bandage pressure, that means additional sub bandage pressure here. Additional sub bandage pressure is highest when we impart the amount of air for bladder expansion is high. So, for higher expansion, higher muscle expansion, the excessive pressure drop, sub bandage pressure is highest, and in case of low muscle expansion, the excessive sub bandage pressure will be low. And this trend shows that for short stretch bandage with a low extensibility, the increase is highest, followed by the medium stretch and low stretch. That means, the working pressure for a cycle increases if the amount of expansion or contraction of bladder increases. So, this working pressure is increasing. So, after this study, now we will try to see some smart compression bandage which are available. So, one of these is that electroconductive yarn used as pressure sensor. So, here we do not need any additional pressure measurement technique. The bandage itself will show what is the pressure applied on the on our body surface. The fabric includes multiple compressible junction comprising of overlapping electroconductive warp and weft yarn separated by gaps. So, there will be gap created. If the gap is filled with compressible dielectric material, now try to see here, suppose this is warp yarn, this is warp yarn, and here we have weft yarn. Now, at this junction, if we can use some compressible material, on compressible material, dielectric material, depending on the tension, as it is compressible, its thickness will change. So, the capacitance value will change, and if we can record that capacitance value, that will give us the inbuilt continuous measurement of the compression pressure we can measure. So, if the gap is filled with compressible dielectric material, pressure applied can be determined by measuring the capacitance of the overlapping conductors. So, that we can see. So, electroconductive yarns will be there. This warp and weft yarns are electroconductive yarns, and in between the compressible dielectric materials are kept. So, depending on the pressure applied, this compressive material will, the capacitance will change, and due to conductive threads, warp and weft threads, this can be, this pressure value can be measured. If the gap is filled with compressible conductive material, so one is compressible dielectric material, then we can measure the capacitance value, and if we fill the gap with the compressible conductive material, then resistance will be measured. So, the resistance is measure of the compressive load. So, both way we can measure. So, this type of smart compression bandage measures the compression. So, the sensor is inbuilt within the structure. So, another bandage where pressure sensor is inbuilt within the sensor, within the bandage itself. Patient limb is clad with a stocking for comfort. An elastic bandage is wound around the limb over the monitor sensor. The sensor contains a pressure sensitive portion whose electrical properties vary with pressure. So, that sensor, that pressure sensitive sensors are there, and upper end of the sensor which is protruding, which can be connected with the display unit, and once the switch is turned on, and we will get the data, and display indicates the pressure detected by the sensor. So, this is another technique. Another bandage which is electrically controlled compression bandage. So, this will change the compression pressure automatically. This is an unique active bandage. This is called active bandage because it has got integrated elastomeric actuator. This will automatically compress and expand. The bandage can massage the muscle group. So, massaging will be there, support the blood circulation or provide relief to tired leg. So, automatic messaging will be there due to elastomagnetic actuators. Another measurement technique here, which is very simple one, the bandage is actually printed with the geometrical shape. Depending on the tension and stretch, the shape will change, like the geometrical shape is say square, depending on the stretch it will become a rectangle. So, from there we can, if we know the stress strain characteristics, we can predict the amount of pressure it is applying. Suppose this is one bandage, this is a bandage lengthwise, and here one say rectangle is there, these are the rectangles. Now, after stretching, so when we during application, after application of load, when it is stretched and this rectangle becomes a square. This will indirectly show that level of stretch, and if we know the stress strain characteristics, we can predict the amount of the stress. So, the manufacturer they themselves put this rectangular shape, and the level of pressure, required pressure will be achieved when it will become square. So, we have to see that whether the shape, required shape has reached, and then we will know that it has reached, it is applying or inserting required pressure. So, when the predetermined pressure is applied to the bandage, the rectangles are stretched to form square. So, this is one development available. So, these are the developments. So, apart from this, we can see there are many other developments. So, in this class one, this course, it is not possible to incorporate everything. If one is interested, it is available in the literature. So, we will end this compression bandage session here. Thank you.